Hi there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Reasonably Fine Art Talk. It's amazing. Today, I get to talk about trains. Now, my beloved, the great Betty Sue, has jumped on, and she's in the background out in Minneapolis, and it's unrehearsed, so it's going to be chaos, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be chaos. But Betty Sue, hopefully, will be putting any comments up. Any relative comments on the screen that I can answer. So anyway, I thought I would talk about train travel because I always am traveling by rail whenever I can. And I very often show up at painting events having come on the train, and people are always, oh, that sounds so interesting. That sounds so great. How do you do it? Well, the problem is Amtrak management is a bunch of ex-airline hacks, pretty much. And the whole focus of Amtrak is short corridor travel. They're kind of politically stuck with these long distance routes that they really don't want to be operating. And so they do not make it easy for those of us who have discovered the one means of long distance travel that you might actually want to take and look forward to taking. It's a sad state of affairs, but it's the reality, and it's not a partisan issue, ladies and gentlemen. There are Republicans who are very good about passenger rail, and there are Democrats who are not necessarily our allies because they're interested in just those corridors. Amtrak is the United States passenger rail system. It was created 50 years ago in 1971 as a way to get the freight railroads out of the passenger train business. It was expected to fail and allow passenger trains to disappear from the landscape, except the oil crisis of 1973 occurred and people started riding trains again. They also made the mistake of having a bunch of people who they hired who liked trains. So Amtrak has survived over the last 50 years, amazingly enough. And today you can still ride overnight, long-distance trains across the country. I created a cheat sheet, and Betty Sue, if you can put up the Visit Hunter Studio, because there is a tab at Hunter Studio that says that is about train travel. And just go to that tab, and you'll find the cheat sheet there. And in the cheat sheet, there's also, I'm happy to answer questions about train travel. And there is a contact form on that tab, but you can download the cheat sheet that I'm going to read from, because I spent about a day trying to summarize for neophytes what you need to know about traveling by train. And when I talk about traveling by train, I am talking about traveling in a sleeping car. And what you get in a sleeping car is you get a private room, and that is the best thing, because you just close that door and then you are in your own little world, and the landscape moves by and you just watch that movie. I always am bringing books and work I should be doing, and I never do any of the books, or I never read the books. I never do any of the work. I just get engrossed in that movie. And the thing that's great about boarding is you don't have to take your shoes off. You don't have to, go through metal detectors. It's civilized. It's civilized. You get a room with privacy. You get windows to watch the world go by. You get meals, which they will bring to you in your room, or you can go to the dining car. And you get bedding. By day, you've got chairs. By night, you got bedding. You get a bed, bedding, 2 pillows, blanket, towels. The beds are about 6'2" long and 28 inches wide in a roomette and 40 inches in a superliner bedroom. So the Canadians here they've considered the 30-day Amtrak system pass that allows 10 trips. Staying in hotels, but love to hear more about the sleeper cars. I believe the system pass is for coach only. I don't believe you can book sleeping cars with that, but I am not positive. There are 2 types of there are two types of sleeping cars. There's Viewliners, which are single level cars that are used in East. So any sleeping car that goes to or from New York or Boston is going to be one of these single level Viewliners. All other Amtrak sleeping car trains are superliners, which are double deck. You enter on the ground level. There's a luggage rack right to your right. You can put your luggage there, and then you go upstairs to your room. There are two kinds of rooms, basically. There are roomettes, which is a compact space for one or two people, and there are bedrooms, which is a somewhat larger space for one or two people. You can buy, you can shoehorn 3 people in there, but I would not recommend it. Who do you find to be the best allies for train travel we could write and advocate for? Well, we're going to do a program about rail advocacy and really get into the politics of it in a couple of weeks. I'm going to have my friend Evan Stair, who is very active with Passenger Rail Kansas and Passenger Rail Oklahoma. He'll be on as our reasonably fine art guest, and we will talk about political advocacy. But the best thing you can do is write your senators and congresspeople and say you want a truly national system, not just this corridor-based system. So you've got basically two types of room. Roomettes, which are compact space for one or two. By day, there are 2 seats that face each other. By night, it's bunk beds. The lower bed, the seats slide together, and the bedding is placed on top of that. A mattress pad and bedding is placed on top of that. And then the upper slides down out of the ceiling. Now in a Viewliner, that is the single level trains that either originate or terminate in New York or Boston, the upper of the roomette is actually quite commodious and has its own window. It's very, very nice. The other type of sleeping car, the superliner, even though that's double decker, the upper berth in a roomette does not have a window, and it's quite coffin-like. The Viewliner roomettes in the East, generally, the old ones have a toilet in the room. The old ones and the new rooms and the new ones both have sinks in the room. But the toilets on the new ones are down the hall. In a superliner, roomettes do not have facilities of any sort. No sink, no toilet. That's down the hall. There are showers on both Viewliners and superliners. And a superliner or Viewliner bedroom is a lovely way to travel. They're quite roomy for 2 people. There's actual luggage storage space. It's nice. Meals. People ask a lot about meals on board. And if you want to get rail fans hot under the collar, you can have a nice discussion about meals. On a few of the long distance trains, the 2-night long distance trains, that is the trains that operate out of Chicago to Seattle and Portland, to Oakland and Emeryville, the Bay Area, from Chicago to LA, and from New Orleans to LA, and the train that goes from LA up to Portland and Seattle. These all have dining cars with meals cooked to order on board. All the other trains have flex meals, and flex meals are basically TV dinners. The least work, Betty Sue is in the background doing thumbs down on flex meals. The entire management philosophy of Amtrak is cost cutting. And so your meals, the least worst flex meal is the pasta and meatballs. That's actually fairly edible. The next least worst meal is the short ribs, but that varies from train to train. You never know. You never know. There's bottled water is provided in your sleeping car room. You get unlimited soft drinks with your meals in the diner or brought to your room. You get one alcoholic drink per trip on in sleepers. Though a few of the trains, one of the things that's interesting about Amtrak is it's a bunch of little fiefdoms. It's really kind of the train leaves and that onboard crew sets its own rules, and you never know what's going to happen from time to time. Some of the long distance trains, people report getting a free alcoholic beverage at each dinner. Others not so much. I think the official policy is one alcoholic beverage per trip. One word of warning: do not trust Amtrak regarding the word vegan. I was looking at their website yesterday, and the enchiladas are their vegan meal, and they're served with cheese. So now people ask, does it feel crowded? My experience is in a sleeping car, you're in your room, in your zone, and you don't have to wear a mask when you're in your room with the door closed, and that's lovely. There's very good air exchange in sleeping cars. It never feels crowded in your room because it's just you and your companion. If you're traveling by coach, yeah, it can get crowded if all the seats are sold. If all the seats aren't sold, it doesn't feel that crowded. The diner, passenger rail policy has always been, in America, the tradition has always been to seat people so that each table gets filled. So it used to be that you'd always get seated, if you're traveling alone or as a couple, you'd get seated with another couple or another group of people. That is currently, in COVID era, that was done away with, and so people were getting to sit individually at tables, but it sounds like more and more they are seating groups of people together again. Again, I think the national policy is that you're supposed to be given your own table, but the practice is that Amtrak crews will often seat people together. Helen Chambers says, Viewliners also have several roomettes plus 2 family rooms on the lower level. Well, that's not Viewliners, that's Superliners. Helen's remark should say, Superliners have a few roomettes, the handicapped room and the family room on the lower level. And you do not have to climb stairs if you have difficulty doing so. Superliners, you do need to go upstairs to move from car to car, however. Is smoking allowed on certain cars or only at stops? It is only at stops, and the train crew will announce when those stops are. But no smoking anymore on board trains. Are there quiet cars for coach? Well, I am not going to advocate for coach travel. Corridor trains have quiet cars. Long distance trains do not have quiet cars. Remember, I said Amtrak is entirely concerned with cost cutting. So for long distance trains, they are running as little equipment as they possibly can. So to have a quiet car would be a luxury that they're not interested in. So coach, to discuss coach for a minute. There's also on those long distance trains I talked about with the good dining, the cooked on board food, i.e. the Chicago-Seattle, Chicago-San Francisco, Chicago-Los Angeles, New Orleans, Los Angeles, Seattle to Portland and Seattle. Those trains all have what is called a sightseer lounge car. That has huge windows on the second floor, a bar and snack area, a bar and snack counter downstairs, and then tables and chairs under glass on that second floor, the length of the car. All the other trains do not. So coach. The seats in coach are larger than domestic first class flights. They've got more leg room and better seat pitch than first class. They're fine for a few-hour trip. The passenger behavior, sometimes everyone is wonderful. Sometimes you have crazy people. Sometimes you have people who are on their phone the entire time. Sometimes you don't. There's no predicting it. It's not my choice for overnight. I always will get a sleeper. And if I can't get a sleeper, I'll fly. Business class is a option that is available on a few trains. It varies. On some trains, it's 2+1 seating with big leather seats. On other trains, it's just coach seating with more space between the seats. And you get free soft drinks throughout the trip. Let's see. Yes, Beth took my advice about the train, and it was great. Clean. People ask about cleanliness of the train. The trains are vacuumed and pretty clean at the beginning of a trip. By the end of the trip, maybe not so much. However, they're not when we travel by sleeping car, we always bring a tub of Clorox or Lysol towelettes, and we wipe the room down. It's going to be our home for the next day or two. Amtrak does not do deep cleaning between runs on the sleeping cars. They do a cursory cleaning. So yeah, what to bring? Bring Clorox wipes. Bring a power strip if you need to plug in a lot of things. Don't bring in a power strip with one of those with the plugs that are curved. Bring the power strip that has the straight plug, because I don't know what you call them, the offset plugs, the way that the outlets were designed on these sleeping cars, I think it was before those were invented. So they will not work. Remember, virtually all the sleeping cars are at least 25 years old. There are 50 new sleeping cars in the Viewliner fleet. They're the ones that don't have toilets in the rooms. Can you still buy a sleeper room once you're boarded for half price and transfer from coach? No, you can buy a sleeper room at full price and transfer from coach. Amtrak got rid of that policy because that made a lot of sense. So bring Clorox wipes, bring power strip with a straight plug, bring gaffer's tape, and if you feel like it, a rubber doorstop. Gaffer's tape is like duct tape. It is very good for stopping things from squeaking. Gaffer's tape does not leave residue on the surfaces the way that duct tape does. Betty Sue has a very good hack so you don't have to carry an entire roll of gaffer's tape. She just takes an expired credit card, wraps several go-rounds of gaffer's tape around it, and it just fits in a pocket. And just it can keep, sometimes the air is blowing too enthusiastically out of the vent, and you can cover over part of the vent with gaffer's tape. It's great stuff. Oh, and I do say bring your own wine, especially if you're on any of the flex dining trains, because the trains with good food have fairly good food. Fred, I just said that there is a sightseer lounge on the long distance trains going from Chicago to Seattle, Chicago to San Francisco, Chicago to LA, New Orleans to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles to Seattle. And there is on the Viewliners, on most of the Viewliners, the first class passengers can hang out in the diner. But that isn't guaranteed on all of them. Anyway, the flex dining wine situation is that they use barefoot wine. If you have wine tastes that are more sophisticated than barefoot wine, then maybe bring your own. Yes, one can consume one's own hooch in a private room. So people oftentimes bring their own beverages. Is there Wi-Fi? Don't know. There isn't Wi-Fi. They may say there's Wi-Fi, but there's not Wi-Fi, not on the long distance trains. There's Wi-Fi on some of the corridor trains. Luggage. you can bring on board 2 personal and 2 carry-on, up to 50-pound bags each. So 2 personal and 2 50-pound bags. So that's a lot of luggage. Nobody is going to weigh the the stuff you're bringing with you. So they could be 65 pounds each, and no one's gonna say anything. If you're checking baggage, checked baggage is, remember I said Amtrak's entire focus is cost cutting. So they have gotten rid of as many station agents as possible. And if there isn't a station agent in either where you're starting or where you're ending, then you can't access any checked baggage. If there is checked baggage between the cities in which you're going, you also get to check 2 bags of up to 50 pounds each. Those bags will be weighed, so you don't want to go over that. If checked baggage is not provided, superliners have luggage area on the lower level where big bags can be stowed. Viewliner cars, that is the single level, any sleeper that originates or ends in New York or Boston, Viewliners do not have additional luggage racks, and that can be a real problem if you have, if there are 2 of you and you've got carry-on bags and big bags and you're traveling in a roomette. It's going to be a real hassle. So just be careful not to overpack. What I do, when I go to a painting event, I ship, my frames and my surfaces ahead. And then I've got a 2-part Thule bag. 1 part has my painting rig and 1 part has my personal clothing. That fits beautifully in a roomette or obviously in a bedroom. Other questions that people ask beforehand. I ask people to submit questions. People were, can I expect the train to run on time? And the answer is no, you cannot expect the train to run on time. Amtrak theoretically has priority over the tracks of the railroads. Amtrak only owns the tracks between Boston and Washington, basically. Everything else, certainly all the long distance trains, those are owned by the freight railroads that have even less interest in passenger rail than Amtrak management. The freight railroads have adopted a operational strategy called precision scheduled railroading, which means it's very imprecise, it's not really scheduled. And it's very, very, very long trains. So very, very, very long trains that can't fit into sidings, you got to keep them on the main line. And a short passenger train does fit into a siding, so you very often get kind of stuck over on the siding to let the freight trains go through. They let coach passengers eat in the diner, just the snack bar. They're currently not allowing coach passengers to eat in the diner. So expect delays. Now, if Amtrak guarantees a connection, which would be for any of the east, if you're going, say, from like Beth Bay's trip from Lancaster, Pennsylvania to Santa Fe, she would change in Chicago. You're basically going to have to change in Chicago. Those connections are guaranteed connections, which means and normally there's like a 4 to 6 hour layover in Chicago. So it's not at all uncommon for a train to be 2 hours late. So if you're 2 hours late, you just have 2 hours in Chicago, no problem. It's not that uncommon for trains to be 4 hours late. And what they often will do is hold, if there are a bunch of passengers going from the Capital Limited to the Southwest Chief, they'll hold the Chief for 20 minutes till the Capital Limited gets in, and they get the bags transferred and the people get transferred. Do you need to bring ice or small cooler for a roomette or bedroom, or is there a way to keep perishables cold? No, you would need to bring a small cooler if you're bringing your own. You bring your own food. They will bring you a tub of ice from the lounge car, but there is not like a communal refrigerator or anything. There is coffee served in the mornings in the sleeping car, and that ranges from very good to terrible. But if your train is like 6 hours late and you had a 4-hour connection, probably it's the connecting train is going to have left. And what you would then do is Amtrak will put you up for the night in Chicago and give you a voucher for $20 or something. But they will put you up at a hotel if they guarantee the connection. If they do not guarantee the connection, they will not put you up. Like this July, I'll be going from Easton to Door County, and I'll be taking the train from BWI, which is both an airport and a train stop, to Washington, D.C., getting the train in Washington, D.C. to Chicago. Then I've got like a 2-3 hour connection to a train that goes up to Milwaukee. They guarantee that connection. If I miss that one train, they'll just honor my ticket at the next train. But to get from BWI to Washington, D.C., the guaranteed connection that Amtrak gives is like a 4-hour layover in Washington, D.C. I am going to take my chances and buy a ticket on a train that gets into Washington, D.C. about an hour before the train to Chicago leaves. If I guess wrong and that train to Washington, D.C. I miss the connection, then I'm out of luck, okay? So if Amtrak guarantees the connection, they will put you up overnight. We're getting to the pricing in a little bit. Are train stations centrally located? It depends. Many of them, absolutely. Chicago Union Station, Kansas City, Albuquerque, New York, Boston, they're all in the heart of downtown. Jacksonville, Savannah, Salt Lake City, not at all. Way outside cities. It depends. Are stations safe? If the station is manned, it's safe. If a station is a bus shelter in a parking lot, as some small town stations are, I think, if it's daytime, you're probably fine. If it's the middle of the night and there's you're way outside of town, I doubt if criminals are going to be hanging out at deserted parking lots at 2 a.m. It's like most things in life. Is there other transport? America has a very scattered transportation policy. So in some cities, there's kind of the train station is a transit hub. In other cities, it's not at all. I more or less rely on Lyft to get me from if I was in South Bend and I needed to get from the train station to the rental car place, and I just called a Lyft. Tipping. My rule of thumb is a baseline of $10 per person per night for just basic service. If they're bringing you meals to your room, if your attendant is wonderful, then the sky's the limit. Prices. Let's talk prices. How much does this wonderful means of transportation cost? The one means of transportation that you might actually want to take, that you enjoy the journey. Basically, what I tell people is that sleeping car travel costs about the same as first class on an airline. The longer the trip, the less true that is. It gets more expensive than first class on an airline. But it's a decent rule of thumb. And what you would ask, why are trains so expensive? Trains have exponentially higher labor costs than an airplane. An airplane is moving a couple hundred people from New York to Chicago in an hour and a half. It's got one flight crew. Train takes 16 hours. It's got multiple engineers, multiple conductors, an onboard staff. Each sleeping car has its own attendant. You've got your dining car attendant. If your meals are being cooked on board, you've got the kitchen crew. You got coach attendants. Adrienne, it is so much more relaxing than any other means of travel. You get into your room, you watch the world go by. You've got a movie, an unbelievably interesting movie going past for the length of the trip. So anyway, traveling in sleeper isn't cheap. Neither is traveling with any degree of comfort on an airline. I did a little bit of comparison pricing. As of April 11th, from LA to Albuquerque, on May 21st, a sleeping car from LA to Albuquerque, get on at 6 p.m. and you're into Albuquerque at about 11:30 the next morning. A sleeping car space, a roomette on the train, was $497 per person. No, actually not per person. It's $497. Probably for two people would be $600 total. Coach is $69 per person. For $497, you get dinner, you get breakfast. A flight from LA to Albuquerque on that same day, first class on American, $300, and coach steerage, $119. So coach is cheaper than airline. Sleeper was a little bit, it was $200 more than first class from LA to Albuquerque. In November, the roomette is currently $297, so less than $300. And American first class was $318, so it's cheap. From Chicago to Albuquerque on May 21st, because it's getting close in and the amount of available space is getting less and less and less, Amtrak is raising and raising and raising its prices. A sleeping car from Chicago to Albuquerque, which gives you dinner, breakfast, and lunch, is $904 for one person. And first class on American from Chicago to Albuquerque on that same day is $687. So it's 200 and change more. Coach is $122, and coach on that day on American Airlines on May 21st is $428. So it's a lot cheaper to go in steerage on the train. So both seem pretty darn pricey to me. And then on November 16th, Chicago to Albuquerque in sleeper is $485, and Chicago to Albuquerque on American Airlines is $463 first class. Coach, the coach on the train is $162, and American Airline is $213. So it's basically pretty similar to first class air, and it's a hell of a lot more enjoyable, I'll tell you. Now, I went into the ins and outs of booking. And this is the complicated part, ladies and gentlemen. The Amtrak website is a mess. It's very confusing. It's sometimes actually even wrong. It's set up for the corridor business of New York. It's great for if you're going from Boston to Washington. It's terrible if you're trying to figure out how to go from Lancaster, Pennsylvania to Albuquerque. So the website is okay for trying to figure out the prices. It'll give you what the prices are if you can negotiate that amount of it, but don't book using the website. Call Amtrak Guest Rewards. That's the Amtrak loyalty program. The 800-307-5000. Don't call the regular Amtrak number. The regular Amtrak number now goes to outsourced call centers. People don't know anything about rail travel. And the wait time can be 3 hours. Call Amtrak Guest Rewards. I find normally less than 10 minutes of wait time, if that. And if they have got longer wait time, just go ahead and do the callback option. And they always have called me back. It is free to join Amtrak Guest Rewards. It doesn't cost anything to join. You don't have to be a member when you call. They can enroll you right then and there. Currently, there isn't a branded credit card. There used to be, and if you have one, it'll still work. But right now, they're not taking new memberships it was a Bank of America MasterCard. They're probably switching who their partner is. But I use that for most of my purchases. And so I comparatively seldom actually purchase sleeping cars. I use points. And just like any point system, a point is worth basically, 3 cents. So, they're all the same. They're all the same. The airline systems and the Amtrak system. Always comparison price check for sleeping cars. Roomettes. This is a little complicated. I'm just going to read what I wrote, and let's make the best of it. And I'm sorry that it's complicated, but it is complicated. Always comparison check prices for roomettes, bedrooms, and family rooms on superliner trains. Where do superliner trains run, ladies and gentlemen? Any sleeping car that is not terminating or originating in Boston or New York. Remember that. So if you're getting a train that does not originate or terminate in Boston or New York, it is worth your while to check the price, and you can use the website for this, though it's complicated. You can also call Amtrak Guest Rewards and get what the prices are. Very often, superliners, because they've got 5 regular bedrooms in each car and 12 and 4, 16 roomettes in each car. There's enough inventory that maybe on some trips there'll be more people booking roomettes than bedrooms, and so the bedroom price will be fairly low. Sometimes you can get a bedroom for like $100 more from, Betty Sue and I in December, we went from Austin to Chicago, which you get on at 9:30 in the morning and get in Chicago at 3 the next afternoon. The superliner bedroom was like $100 more than the roomette, and it's much, much nicer because you have your own toilet, your own shower, and your own sink in the superliner bedroom. So always check to see what the price is. At other times, the bedroom will be double, triple what a roomette is. But it's worth checking. It's also worth checking to see what a family room is on a superliner. Family rooms are on the lower level. They're the width of the train. They're down at one end of the car, and they've got 2 little windows, one on each side. And so you can see out both sides. They do not have any facilities, but they are roomier than a roomette. So it's very good for 2 people if there's a good price on it. I don't prefer them. I prefer being on the upper level, and I like the bigger window on a roomette if I'm traveling by myself. But if it's 2 people, I would go for the family room. Whitefish to Minneapolis is a great trip. How uncomfortable is Coach? We just talked about that, Ann V. Brown. You can rewatch this. Let's see. Yes, I just talked about the family rooms. If you aren't sure if someone will be traveling with you, you can book your sleeper space now. And then if it turns out, like very often, Betty Sue and I travel separately. We're in separate places a lot of the time. We try to travel on long train trips together. If she can make it, I'll have booked the space already, but then you can get a thing called an open ticket that adds a second person to that room. It sometimes confuses the train crew, but it always works out in the end. Betty Sue is in the background with her hand over her head nodding, that it sometimes confuses the train crew. But you can always add another person. If your travel plans change, you can just, if you keep that reservation number. I've had a trip that was supposed to be New York to Jacksonville, and I've switched New York to Jacksonville in March, and I've switched it to be Chicago to Denver in July. There's no penalty aside from a fare differential. And if Chicago to Denver in July is cheaper than New York to Jacksonville in March, I will get a credit to my account. Or if I did it with points, they'll throw the points back in my account. So it's pretty flexible. If you totally cancel a reservation, there are various penalties. But if you bank your travel, basically, I find it much easier. I guess airlines have gotten a little bit better about that. Ray Masuko asked about Bellows Falls to Seattle. Well, that's a very good question. Bellows Falls, Vermont to Seattle. It's not too complicated at all to even contemplate. But the trick is the train from Bellows Falls leaves Bellows Falls at 12:30 in the afternoon, gets into Springfield, Mass at 3 o'clock. The train from Boston on its way out to Chicago goes through Springfield, Mass at 3:15. That is not a guaranteed connection. If the Vermont train was late and you missed the connection, you would be out of luck. So I would not recommend going to Seattle from Bellows Falls. I would get someone to drive me down to Springfield, Mass, or to Albany, New York, and get the train there. The connection in Chicago is guaranteed, so I would not have any qualms about that. So you'd leave Springfield, Mass at 3:15 in the afternoon, you'd be into Chicago at 10 o'clock the next morning. You leave Chicago, I think, at 2 o'clock on that train. And you would have 1 night, 2 nights en route, and you're into Seattle at about 10 a.m. So 3 nights altogether, leaving on day 1, leaving Springfield, Mass at 3 in the afternoon, overnight, into Seattle at 10 a.m. Okay, westbound and southbound trains have odd numbers. Eastbound and northbound trains have even numbers. Roomettes have numbers. Bedrooms have letters. Virtually all sleepers can be oriented either way, so you don't ever know if roomette 4 is going to be on the left or on the right until you get on board. Okay, Amtrak management has been taken over by ex-airline hacks. So stupid airline practices are increasing. Amtrak is much more likely than it used to be to simply annul trains when bad weather shows up. Amtrak's, they indulge in yield management pricing. Prices will often be quite high when first posted. It always used to be that the lowest fares were always posted at the beginning, and then prices went up closer in. Amtrak, you can make reservations 11 months in advance. It used to be that guaranteed you the cheapest price, no more. Sometimes the first price that's up will be insanely high. I booked returning from Door County, I booked from Milwaukee to Springfield, Mass, and it was like $600. But what you do is you keep checking the price on the website, and the price had dropped a couple of weeks ago to $300. So I called Amtrak Guest Rewards and had them refund me their difference. Oh, I know those schedules, Scott. I'm a little bit on the spectrum that way. I am much more fun than a travel agent, and better dressed too, though I should shave more. If my art career doesn't work out, I could get a job with Amtrak. No, I couldn't. They're not interested in the long distance trains. They would not hire me. No, I could get a job as an independent travel consultant. And I think about that at times, ladies and gentlemen. I do think about that. Amtrak no longer. You used to get on board and they'd give you a route guide telling you what interesting things are along each route. They don't do that anymore. That costs money. On Facebook, there are friends of each of the long distance trains that are just run by friends of the long distance trains. And virtually all of those do have the old route guides available for download on them. Amtrak no longer publishes timetables. You have to enter your start city, and this is on their website. the city you're starting from and the city you want to go to. And if Ray entered Bellows Falls, Vermont to Seattle, it would say, we're sorry, there are no trains that serve that. It wouldn't explain what the fact that there's no guaranteed connection in Springfield, Mass. The website is a mess, and not publishing timetables is infuriating. Fortunately, the Rail Passengers Association does maintain timetables, so you go to their website. Their website is on the cheat sheet here too. Mary says she'll be taking a bus to catch the Empire Builder in Portage. Worried about waiting at the station for hours, not knowing when the train will get there if it's late. Station has no Wi-Fi and no bathroom. You're heading west or are you heading east? If I was heading west, I would not be terribly worried in Portage because chances are nothing will have broken that early on in the trip, and the train will probably be fairly close to on time. If it was coming from Seattle, a lot of things can happen between Seattle and Portage, and I would be more concerned about on time on that. You're going to be waiting a long time, Tracy. First off, Amtrak does not want to reinstate the Jacksonville to New Orleans train. What they are trying to do is start a New Orleans to Mobile train, and the freight railroads are fighting that tooth and nail because they believe that once new service starts up on any line, that the camel's nose is under the tent, and they are fighting that as hard as they can. Los Angeles to Austin, very easy. That's the Sunset Limited, Texas Eagle. Nashville has no passenger train service. Well, they've got a commuter train that goes to like Mount Juliet or something, but don't try to get to, if Amtrak doesn't serve a city, don't even bother. What about leaving a car at a train station? I don't know the particulars in Hattiesburg. Generally, I know in my town of Bellows Falls, there are dedicated parking spots, and what is suggested is when you park there, call the police department and just say, I'm going to be gone from now till whenever you get back. Can you just swing by each day? And they'll basically keep track of it. And I guess if you get broken into, they'll call up and say you got broken into. In some places, there are parking lots, manned parking lots. Like when I go to Springfield, Mass, there's Ken's parking right next to the train station. If I go to Albany, New York, there's very good parking in the station complex itself. Betty Sue, you threw a comment up for a moment. Okay, booking through local station agent, is it still possible? It is if you've got a local station agent still. Amtrak was trying to get rid of as many of those as possible. The most recent legislation required them reinstating all the agents they fired in fiscal year 2019, but a lot of towns don't have them anymore. Betty Sue is making fighting gestures in the background back there. Gosh, I've gone on for it's 48 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. I'm nearly done. To keep track of your train status, yes, you in Portland, in Portage, when you're obsessively worrying about where the train is, on my cheat sheet, I included a site, an app that I really like. Amtrak's got one on its website, but I prefer this one, ASM Transit Docs, and it's a very good, very intuitive. It's a nationwide map, and it shows where your train is, and you can click on the icon for the train, and it tells you its status. In general, don't book round trip tickets. If you're going from, if Beth Bathe is going from Lancaster to Santa Fe, book 2 one-way tickets, Lancaster to Santa Fe and Santa Fe back to Lancaster. Why? Because very often when you get on the train, your sleeping car attendant, you'll hold your ticket up and the sleeping car attendant will be like, I got you. And then that means the sleeping car attendant needs to go to the conductor and say, yes, the passenger got on in Lancaster, who's going through to Chicago. And I know you traveled coach to Pittsburgh. I'm just making this a simpler story. But if the conductor does not manually boop cancel your ticket out, Amtrak will think that you didn't get on the train and will void the rest of your trip. And that could be a problem. If you get on the train, you have a lovely trip to Santa Fe, and then a week later you get to the train station and they have no record of you. So always buy one-way tickets. There's no savings in buying a round-trip ticket anyway. Wi-Fi, non-existent for long-distance trains. For a little while, they had some system that each car attendant had some little hotspot thing that was supposed to work for each car, but it didn't work, and people just got annoyed having stuff drop all the time. Because what Amtrak uses are for Jackson Hole. There's no Amtrak service to Wyoming, so hang on a second. I'll look at a map. The Wi-Fi. So they stopped. I don't think they even claim to offer Wi-Fi anymore on the long distance trains. On the corridor trains, absolutely. What Amtrak uses is cell phone service. So a lot of where Amtrak goes is where there isn't cell phone service anyway. So therefore, there's no Wi-Fi. So don't be glued to your phone when you're on the train. It's too much fun anyway. Then the final page of the cheat sheet is a map that shows which are the Superliner routes, which are the Viewliner routes, which are the Viewliner routes, class. All the trains that start or end in New York or Boston that have sleeping cars. And then it lists each one, how many nights they are, whether it's the flex dining or the good food. And then, as I say, time permitting, I'm generally happy to answer non-neurotic questions regarding travel by train. And if you go to my website and go under train stuff or trains or something like that, you will see the Charlie's cheat sheet. And at the bottom of the cheat sheet, you can both download this PDF of the whole darn document, but there's also a contact form, and you can send me an email about that. Now, the person who was asking about getting to Jackson Hole, oh, where is Jackson Hole? That's far west, about the middle of the state. I would say probably Salt Lake City is probably your closest. And that's served by the California Zephyr, which is normally a daily train. Almost all the long distance trains, Amtrak has cut back to 5 days a week because they furloughed most of their employees back when COVID hit, which was dumb. And the employees have gone off to get better fish to fry. And so restaffing has been very problematic. But anyway, the California Zephyr is 5 days a week. Currently, after Memorial Day, it's supposed to go back to being daily. But it gets into Salt Lake City at like 2 a.m. Westbound. So it's not ideal. Sorry. Have I used the Canadian system? Oh, absolutely. I've been back and forth across Canada probably about 30 times, I think, over the years. Our Roots on the Rails music trains we did extensively. Of course, the Canadian system has wonderful customer service, but is even less efficient than Amtrak. If you're booking one way, what about splitting rail and air? Sure. I mean, I just find air travel so extraordinarily unpleasant and demeaning that I avoid it if at all possible. So for more information, yes, visit hunterstudio.com. I think that's a very quick tour through the world of Amtrak. Betty Sue, why don't you want to jump on for a second and let us know any quick impressions you have, or are you going to just stay in the back? There she is. Betty Sue, any quick things I left out that occurred to you?
Oh, I think somebody might have asked, but I don't remember if I let it go by or if it was different. But when people were asking about the places to hang out that are in the train, and just because you're in your private car doesn't mean you can't go look in the observation cars.
Oh yeah, it doesn't mean you can't hang out there. If that Amish, they just take over that observation car, drinking, partying, dancing.
Oh, John Willem has a good one.
Okay. Oh yes, thank you, John. John Wilhelm is a Roots on the Rails person who now travels. He and Terry Hudson have become converts to the wonder that is rail travel, and now take Amtrak a lot of the time. The Metropolitan Lounge in Chicago, it's a wonderful facility. It has showers that are really clean. They give you beautiful big towels. It's roomy. There's a lot of space to spread out. That has Wi-Fi. You can stow luggage there. If your train happens to be on time and you've got 6 hours in Chicago, you can leave your luggage in this very strange Spartan Rome and go wander around the city of Chicago without worrying about your bags. There's snacks and beverages, and it's terrific. Many of the, not many, several other cities in the US have Metropolitan Lounges as well. But for long distance travel, the Chicago Metropolitan Lounge, since you're probably going to have to change in Chicago, the Chicago Metropolitan Lounge is a wonderful facility. All right, I think that'll do it. Don't you, Betty Sue?
Yeah, I think that was great.
All right, thank you all so much, and we'll see you on the rails. You take good care, and we'll see you next week when I think David Boyd is going to be our guest. David Boyd. You take it easy. Bye-bye.